Hey guys, welcome back. Trip Coach here with Trip and for Poverty, where we don't trust, we verify, and operate with integrity and transparency. Today we got another short clip from Discover Crypto and referencing the Fed and what will signal the next leg of the bull run. And TLDR, it's based off of course, the rate cuts and tariffs. So I'm going to show you what's taking place in the latest regarding that and how, yeah, we are still coiled and poised, ready to take off to the next level. So let's just jump into this.
I just landed in Dubai and found out the Federal Reserve is about to pump the entire crypto market. Then on top of this, you had the SEC announce they're no longer taking liquid staking as a security, which is really good for specific altcoins. So here's all the cryptos I'm watching. The view from the pad is absolutely insane. Yo, are you kidding me? China's also on top of this, trying to launch their own stablecoin now. This comes after JD Vance also just said he had Bitcoin.
The crypto speech was a big hit. And I know a lot of smart people love crypto. I know some smart people actually have reservations about it. Sure. For our audience, can you just kind of make the case for crypto and people who have concerns and quite frankly don't even understand it? There are a lot of folks out there. I know a lot of people own it, but
yeah, of course. So look, I'm an owner of Bitcoin here, but I'm also the vice president of the United States. So I want to be careful, but I think the core value proposition of cryptocurrency is that it's a way of transacting and a way of storing value in a modern digital age. Look, 100 years ago, if you wanted to go and buy something, you put a dollar bill on the table, you put a gold coin on the table. The value proposition of Bitcoin is that it can serve the same function, but in a digital age, a way that's secure, that's safer from fraud, that allows people to buy and sell and store value, but in a way that's consistent with the modern technological age that we live in. Now, having said that, I fully accept there are risks to all of these things. There are always risks to new technologies. Our approach in the Trump administration is to say, let people innovate. Let people figure this stuff out on their own. If the critics of Bitcoin are right, I happen to think that they're wrong. That will eventually win out in the marketplace. If the advocates of Bitcoin are right, and I happen to agree with them, if they make their case, that's eventually going to win out in the marketplace. What you shouldn't have is a dictatorial government that tells certain industries they're not allowed to do what they need to do. You've got to let people make these decisions on their own. And that's sort of been our approach. We want common sense regulatory regimes. We want to allow the cryptocurrency industry to participate in the mainstream of the economy. But then ultimately, the laws of economics, the laws of supply and demand are going to make the determinations from there.
I think that was a great explanation from Vice President JD Vance about what is Bitcoin and how to basically approach this asset class. It's like, you decide, let the market decide, so to speak, of who the winner will be, and just put in some simple regulations and clarity framework so that individuals can get in. Like previously, the way that the framework was set up was so that the average wage earner did not have access to these premium railways for capital acquisition. You had to be a quote unquote accredited investor. So you had to have a certain amount of money in order to participate. So that meant that if you were in the bottom tier and didn't have that certain amount of money, then you were always left out of those available options to trade and to buy into. And Bitcoin is the first one that was literally created by the people and then given to the people first. So Wall Street did not get access to this. There was no accredited investors with this. It was literally kicked off via newsletter and threads on the internet. So prior to that, everything was, who do you know? What's your network? Not your net worth, your network. Like, who do you know that can get you access to X, Y, Z? Are you rubbing elbows at country clubs, things of that nature? So it's the rules of the game have been flipped for sure. But reference what he's talking about here is that now that the Ethereum staking is not considered a security, that definitely opens up a bunch of money and liquidity that can roll in because, of course, Wall Street, hedge funds, huge companies are always looking at ways to get more yield on their capital. Where can they park their capital and earn more yield or outpace the debasement of the currency? And previously, that used to be in treasury bonds, but now we know that treasury bonds actually have the 10-year has a negative real yield. So clearly, if you're sitting on a bunch of cash, like Michael Saylor was a couple of years ago, you do not want to put in treasuries, nor do you want to hold it because you know that you're going to be losing out on that. Now, with liquid staking, such as on ETH and other ETH layer 2s or similar staking protocols, being declared non-securities, well, that gives these massive amounts of capital sitting on the sidelines places to park it. And these are the ones that he's recommending might see a bid because of this new legislation.
Most importantly, the United States has been trying to create this own value with US treasuries and stablecoins and take over the entire crypto market. So obviously the first project that is going to be most affected by this is Ethereum, as it has the largest liquid staking service out of any single cryptocurrency. That would be Lido staking with over $31 billion locked up. Now, why this is so important is because it means it can accelerate the speed of more Ethereum ETF approvals. The second altcoin that's going to be really bullish is Solana and Jito, J-I-T-O, followed by what could potentially be a sleeper project, SWELL, S-W-E-L-L, which of course is a non-custodial Ethereum liquid staking protocol. Some more prominent ones you've heard of are probably going to be Frax, Anchor Staking, Eigenlayer, and DZ's favorite, Cardano. Dude, what in the Justin Bieber?
Now, I am personally not a big ETH maxi. I do believe in the theory that Raoul Powell has pitched, that the financial layer will be built on top of Ethereum, and he likens it to Microsoft. So he's like, you don't get fired for building or adding applications on Microsoft and any of the Fortune 500 companies. So even though there's Solana and all these other layer 2s out there, he believes that it will all just aggregate towards ETH. And we're seeing a huge run up in ETH right now. Where is it? Bitcoin. ETH. Yeah, we hit 4,400, 40 million worth of ETH liquidated shorts, 45, 46. So ETH has just been on a massive tear after Bitcoin went and tried to take out its previous all-time high and kind of failed and got stunted for now. But I do believe there's some opportunity in ETH. I got burned by it by buying the tops when I came in the last previous cycle in NFT hype. So it's just not something that I know enough about. And I believe that, yeah, Bitcoin is just the fundamental one to hold in your portfolio. So I've just rolled out of ETH. I do have a little Solana, as you guys have mentioned before in my portfolio. That's definitely part of the 80-20 rule. But I'm not bearish on ETH. I do believe it's got some massive tailwinds behind it, especially given what we just seen right now.
Is this hair? Bottom line, though, is these markets are just ramping up, with the Federal Reserve confirming 2 interest rate cuts. We're more likely to get 50 basis points, which I predicted very, very early on. We were predicting the first interest rate cut to take place in June of 2025 this year, but it was extended by 90 days, putting us in September because of the Chinese tariffs. We've been following this to a T. We predicted back in 2024 January, and now we're gearing up for that next extension into this bull run. Very cheap liquidity. Money's going to get cheaper. Interest rates are going to come down. Money is going to inflate, and we're going to see huge, huge returns in your risk on assets. So
and that is much, much more likely. I think we're at 90% odds. And I think the last thing I actually heard is there's potentially 4 rate cuts coming by the end of this year, which would just be insane. I know right now Trump is once again pressuring Powell. Here's the latest on Trump. Trump is considering a major lawsuit against Fed Chair Powell. So the next FOMC is scheduled for September 16th through the 17th. Now, the hard part about this for Powell, because obviously he is being a bit political and wants to go down as, the chairman that, I guess saved the economy or some bullshit, whatever ego trip he's on right now. The problem with this is that he's kicked the can down the road so far that if he does have to implement 4 rate cuts or even a 50 basis point rate cut, that just shows that he was once again late. So he's stuck between a rock and a hard place at this stage now. And if he does any emergency cuts outside of this, that looks even worse. So all that does is give less and less credibility to the markets, to the Fed, basically. And the market's looking at the Fed for stability. They're looking at me like, okay, so obviously Trump was right. If you have to do 4 rate cuts by the end of the year, that's no good, because normally you want to do rate cuts and then wait to see how the market prices that in, and then you adjust and do another one. We've only got 3-4 months left in this year. And if he pushes it all the way out to here, then yeah, you got September, October. There's nothing in November, but he could still do a rate cut in November and still end up with 4 by the end of the year, or just pack them into 2 or 3 and you do a 50 basis point, 25 and a 25. But either way, the liquidity is coming, more cowbell, as Raoul Powell would say. And one other thing that he mentioned about tariffs, That's where the uncertainty is. I believe this is going to continue. Trump is just going to continue extending the tariffs on China because he can't really win this. As we saw, he had to back down against this. And that's because they have the rare earths and they control the bulk of the supply chain and exports. So one way or another, I don't think anything's going to happen with this. He's just going to keep kicking this can down the road. And maybe he's doing it right now specifically until he gets the rate cuts. And then he doesn't have to worry about this. I have no idea. But either way, this is kind of a nothing burger at this stage. So we already saw the tariffs get added in and then the markets blew up. So whatever he ends up doing, it's going to be favorable for the markets because they already tested the stability of it and that shit just hit the fan. So it doesn't really matter at this stage what tariffs are. And all Bitcoin is really waiting for is liquidity. So right now we are hovering at that 119 level. It went up and took out 122, and the previous all-time high was 123. So it did wick up to 122 and some change, but it's consolidating again at 119, which is where we saw a lot of support here, kind of at the this is literally 119.2, and now we're at 120. So this is becoming a new level of support, basically. I think we hit this, I don't know, it's all this year. Yeah, did we hit it again? Earlier this year? I guess not. No. Yeah. So either way, TLDR, ETH could be a good option, good play. There could be a lot coming in for that coming soon. Bitcoin will continue to rally. Liquidity is coming into the markets. Alt season is just now starting to pick up with ETH leading the charts right now. Hasn't taken out its previous all-time high yet, but it is definitely on its way. Wow, I didn't know we were actually that close. The previous all-time high is 4,900, just shy of 5K, and that was almost 4 years ago. So I think we're heading back there very soon. Shout out to all y'all that bought the dip down here at 15. Man, you're doing Gucci. You're up 3x. Wow, 3x in 4 months. That is crazy. I had no idea ETH ripped that fast. That is nuts. Are you serious? So April 8th, we were sitting at 1,400. And yeah, we're almost up 3x once we get to 52. 42. I'm sorry. We are up 3x for ETH. Man, congrats to y'all. That is phenomenal, man. I had no idea. Still not buying any, but those have been bullish and holding since the last cycle. You are well-deserved, well-earned, well-played. Congrats. All right, that's all I got for this video. Smash that HBO special, help a brother out. Like, subscribe, comment down below. And until next time, live daily and achieve your impossible. Yeah.